Okay, chapter 6.2b is about circles, and we just need to make sure we know everything there is to know about circles. A circle is a set of points. That's this edge here. This green edge is a set of points that lie in a plane that are all the same distance from a point called the center. So this point is the center. And all of these are the same distance from the center. If you go from here to any point, it's the same distance. Now the interesting thing is the distance from the center to the edge of the circle anywhere is always the same length, and we call that the radius. And this is a drawing of the radius. The radius is the distance from the center to any point, or it's halfway across the center of the circle. Now if we went across some other place, it wouldn't be the same distance, but you have to go through the center point. And the only other line is this blue one, and it's called the diameter. And it's the distance across the circle that goes through the center of the circle. And it is, of course, the same as 2 radii. Okay, radius is 1. Alright, and 2 radius is radii. Alright, so the diameter, we usually call that d. Diameter is 2r, and that's your formula. D equals 2r, or r equals d, the diameter, divided by 2, or d over 2. So those are your two formulas. The diameter is equal to 2r, and the r, the radius, is diameter divided by 2. Hopefully that's clear. Okay. That's the first thing we need to know, is how to find a diameter. If we have the radius, we just multiply it by 2. If we have the diameter and we are needing the radius, we can divide it by 2, and that gives us the diameter. Pretty easy. They do want us to find the circumference, and the circumference, C-I-R-C-U-M-F-E-R-E-N-C-E, the circumference is the distance around a circle. A distance around a circle is called the circumference, and it has a formula. The formula is the C, always the C for circumference. Diameter times pi, but they usually write it like this. Or the circumference is 2 times the radius, which gives you the diameter times pi, but they always write it like this, 2 pi r. Alright, so these are the same thing. The diameter is 2 times the radius, and so you can see why they're the same. Okay, these really are the same thing, and you have to have either the diameter or the radius, and then you use this pi. Pi is equal to, in this case we're just going to call it 3.14. It actually is 3.1415, etc., etc. 159, I think, and then it keeps going forever. But this is called an approximation of pi. In fact, you can sometimes just use 3. 3 times the diameter is going to give you a relatively accurate idea of the circumference. Or 2 times the radius times 3 for this one over here. So pi is 3.14, or sometimes they use 22/7. They use the fraction 22/7, and that's kind of fun to do occasionally. But usually we just use our calculators and plug in 3.14. So for instance, if we have a circle, and the radius of the circle, which is from the center to the outside edge, is 4. Let's change this over here. I'll make that look like a 4. 4 meters, 4 feet, 4 centimeters, 4 units. Okay, so if we're looking for the distance around, that's the circumference. With C equals, we're going to use this formula, 2 pi r, which is the same as 2 times 3.14 times the radius, which is 4. So use your calculator. 2 times 4 is 8, and then 8 times 3.14. 8 times 3.14 is 25.12. So it's approximately 25.12. I think that's what I said. Units. They're not square units, it's just units because we're not doing area, we're just doing circumference. Circumference is similar to perimeter, but that's what we talk about for circles. Now okay, so let's remind ourselves real quick since I've got a new page. C equals, the circumference equals pi times the diameter, or the circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius. These are just a couple of formulas we need. They're basically the same thing. We also have one more for area, and area is pi r squared. Area is different than circumference because instead of just being the distance around, it's the distance, or it's the area inside. So say we have a circle, and we have something like a line here to show how tall the circle is. This would be like a diameter. If we drew it in here, it ought to be the same. Okay, so we're going to say this is 4. Let me actually use the right tool. 4 feet. This is the same thing. It's 4 feet tall. And we're going to use the formula for area. Area equals pi r squared, and I always want you to use I always want you to write the formula out every time. Remember that pi is 3.414, and the radius, see, this is the diameter, and this is the tricky part. You can't use the diameter in this, you have to use the radius. And so the radius would be half of this distance, not all the way across, which is 4 feet, so it would be 2 feet. So it would be 2 squared. And in this case, 2 squared is 4. If it were 3 squared, it would be 9. If it were 4 squared, it would be 16. But 2 to the second power is 4. The interesting thing is that 2 times 2 is also 4. But you have to be careful because 3 times 2 is not 9, 3 times 2 is 6, 4 times 2 is 8. When we're squaring, it's really times itself. 2 times itself is 4, 3 times itself is 9, 4 times itself is 16. Alright, so don't get confused by that. So the area equals 3.14 times 4, because 2 squared is 4. And we come up here and we say 3.14 times 4 is, I'm going to try that again with an actual decimal point. 3.14 times 4, 12.56. Better. So area equals 12 what did I say it was? I don't like it when I do that. 5.6. 12.56 feet to the second power. Alright, so for this way, if this were a square and we had it, I don't know if I can draw it exactly right. If we had a square that was 4 by 4, that would be 16. But there's all this area that you don't end up using. There's all of this stuff that you're not using when you have a circle. So if it were a square and it were 4 by 4, it would be 16, but since it's a circle, it's 12.56. And that makes sense. So that's how you find circumference and area. You should be ready for this quick assignment.